What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to this week's second episode of the greatest podcast on turf. I'm Anthony.
I'm Ryan.
And today we are back with our week 4 greatest stardom sit-em on turf.
So to be no more turf in the NFL, but it's fine.
No more grass in the NFL, I thought.
No more turf.
Oh, really?
Huh. Yeah, grass is better.
Guess we're going to have to rebrand. No. Fuck that. But now we're back with this week's Stardom Sit-em. Earlier in the week, we uploaded our fantasy football waiver wire pickups. Go check that out. Maybe there's some guys still out there that we talked about. Then we did a week 3 NFL recap. Kind of just shot the ship for a little bit. Tomorrow, be on the lookout for our week 3 best bets. We went 7-2 2 weeks ago, and last week we went 4-2. So we're making money. We're up. We're the greatest podcast on turf for a reason. Then Friday, we are dropping our week 4 NFL predictions. And before we get into any Stardom Sit-em, Ryan's going to tell you guys about today's sponsor.
Little Italy Pizzeria. They got the best cheesesteaks, the best pizza in all of Delaware. 2 locations. One of those is in Middletown, Delaware. The other one is in Townsend. It is a great family business. Great food, great people, great prices. Be sure to come in and check it out. Let them know that the greatest podcast on turf sent you. They will take care of you. Should prove that you're subscribed, that you listen to us, and they will hook you up with an additional discount. Personally, I just had a cheesesteak, and it was pretty good, if I do say so myself. And with no further ado, Stardom Sit-em.
All right, Stardom quarterbacks this week. I had 2 guys on this list. One of the guys is like a streamer for the week, and the other guy is a guy who has been very disappointing. So I'll keep the streamer one short and sweet. It's Jared Goff. If you need to stream a quarterback this week, Jared Goff is not a bad option. He's playing against the Seattle Seahawks defense that has gotten worse as the weeks have gone on. I said it after week 1. That win against the Broncos was their Super Bowl, and they don't have much else going for them. So if you need to stream a QB this week, you look no further than Jared Goff. And the guy that has been disappointing this week that I am saying to start this week is Russell Wilson at the Raiders. Division matchup. Broncos defense has been pretty good. The Raiders defense has been very inconsistent. This has all the makings to be a high scorer on one end anyway. I think this is the week the Broncos finally come out and put up some points and get an assertive win. So, I'm starting Russ this week. I don't really have a choice because Jared Goff isn't even available in the league that I'm in. Well, the league that I have Russell Wilson. So, I'm confident starting Russell Wilson this week against the Raiders. It is a division matchup, yes, but the Raiders' defense has looked very inconsistent and has not looked very good. And, the Broncos' defense has been good. The Broncos' offense just really can't put up points. They can't get it done in the red zone. But I think we're going to see some big plays from the Broncos this week, and I think Russell Wilson's finally going to actually cook this week.
I have 2 quarterbacks to touch on for my stardom this week, and they're both in the same game. This is for Superflex / daily fantasy people that want to save money on their quarterback. It is Geno Smith and Jared Goff, the 2 GOATs themselves. Geno Smith has had a pretty decent fantasy season so far. 17 points against Denver, only 7 against San Francisco, and then 19 against Atlanta. Which are pretty decent numbers. The 2 starts, 17 and 19, I think is pretty fine for the price of Geno Smith. Because I know that dude is probably very cheap on the quarterback list. Probably one of the bottom people.
Yeah.
Jared Goff has been, kind of the same, a little bit better. 17, 26, and 14. This game has one of the highest over-unders this week, sitting at 50.5. In my opinion, it's one of the games that could probably score, it probably will score one of the most points this week. So they have a higher over-under than the Dolphins-Bengals. That doesn't directly mean higher fantasy points, but it means technically there tends to be more points on the board, which therefore results in more fantasy points. Now, where will they go? The Lions, I think they're going to run the ball more, and I think Geno Smith is a little bit cheaper than Jared Goff, so I'd probably be leaning his way, but I don't think you could go wrong with either of them in a weekly fantasy situation.
No, absolutely not. I had few stardom running backs this week. The first guy is Dameon Pierce going up against the Chargers. Now I know Dameon Pierce has kind of gotten his feet moving these past 2 weeks. Now he's been putting up pretty good fantasy numbers. I'll give you the exact numbers in a second. I don't know why I just closed down my app like a dummy. So just give me 1 second on that. And I clicked on all of the leagues I don't have him in. The past 2 weeks, Dameon Pierce has put up 10 and 18 points. He got 15 touches 2 weeks ago. He had 20 touches last week. He was involved in the passing game. He had about 20 yards receiving, 80 yards rushing, and he rushed for a touchdown. I think that's going to continue against the Chargers this week. That, yes, they've been okay on defense, but they haven't been all that great against the run. And the Texans seem as though that as the season goes on, and even the past few weeks that have shown me that the offensive line is getting better and that they're going to try and get Dameon Pierce going early and often. Hence why he had 20 touches in a game last week against the Chicago Bears that aren't awful against the run, and especially on defense. So I'm starting Dameon Pierce this week confidently. If you can give me a starting running back that's getting 15, 20 touches a game, I'll take that every week. And he's probably going to find the end zone. The Chargers are banged up on offense. So, I can see this game being a little bit of a defensive slugfest. But I think that Dameon Pierce is in for a pretty big game against the Chargers this week.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the weeks where there's a few running backs that aren't going to be in the starting lineup. For example, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery might miss time. Joe Mixon might miss time. Dalvin Cook might miss time. There's a lot of guys that are potentially out this week. Now, there are a few backup running backs that are immediate starters when the original starter goes out. One of those guys is a Khalil Herbert. One of those guys is an Alexander Madison. But one of the guys that I'll touch on is Jamal Williams. Going up against the Seattle Seahawks this week. Seattle Seahawks allow 4.95 yards a carry to running backs. And Jamal Williams, I think, will get a lot of touches with Dre Swift being out. Jamal Williams is most likely the one that's going to start out of the other running backs, so that's why I selected him. But if you have any of those backup running backs, you can definitely start them this week. If you're the Dalvin Cook owner, you start Alexander Madison if Dalvin Cook is out. But Jamal Williams against Seattle, like I said earlier, it's one of the highest over-unders this week. Jamal Williams has 2 games with 2 touchdowns this season. And I don't see that changing really against Seattle. So if you need a running back, which a lot of people do, go ahead and rock with Jamal Williams.
Yeah, and like Ryan said, if Dalvin Cook's out, you have to start Alex Madison this week. Last year proved every game Dalvin Cook missed, Alex Madison was good for at least 20 points. Yeah. So, that goes without saying.
There are some backup running backs that you can't necessarily start, and I can't think of it off the top of my head quite yet, but because they turn into a committee. But the Bears situation, it's just Khalil Herbert.
Yeah.
The Vikings, it is just Alexander Madison. The Bengals might be a little bit more of a risk with Samaje Perine, but the Lions are a lock. It's Jamal Williams getting the heavy bulk of touches.
Yeah, and this week my second stardom running back is Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills going against the Baltimore Ravens. We saw Devin Singletary last week. He had 11 targets in the passing game. He only had 9 rushes for 13 yards, but to be fair, they didn't run the ball a whole lot because it was kind of a too high-powered offense going at it. But, when you can get 11 targets from your running back, he had 78 receiving yards and a touchdown, and the Ravens just kind of got tuned up a little bit. Who did the Ravens play last week? The Patriots? Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson killed it in the passing game. Damian Harris did his thing running the ball. He even had some catches. So, look for Devin Singletary to come out here and do his thing again this week against the Baltimore Ravens team that has been very inconsistent against running backs so far through the first 3 weeks of the season. 11 targets to your running back is good, and he hauled in 9 of them. And he still had 9 carries. So, Devin Singletary is going to see a lot of the bulk workload this week, especially if this does turn into a shootout, because Josh Allen is going to be looking for the checkdowns to the Devin Singletaries of the world, the Gabe Davises of the world, when Diggs is drawing attention from Marlon Humphrey or Marcus Peters and the safety over top in Marcus Williams or whoever else they got back at safety. So I'm starting Devin Singletary this week. Unfortunately, I know it's Devin Singletary, but he had a great game last week as the season's going on. He had 8 points week 1, 5 week 2, and 24 last week. Week 2 against Tennessee was a fluke, but it's not saying much when your quarterback and star wide receiver come have like 5-6 touchdowns. So, somebody's going to miss, and it was just happened to be Devin Singletary. But no, he was heavily involved in the offense against the Dolphins last week, and look for a similar game plan / game script this week for the Bills to going up against the Baltimore Ravens.
Next running back I will be touching on it is Breece Hall against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers haven't been that good against the run this season. One of the lower teams in terms of going up against the run. Breece Hall comes in. He is getting more and more touches each week. He's getting a lot of catches. He has been pretty good for the New York Jets so far. I think this is a decent opportunity to go try and buy Breece Hall. Its price might be a little high right now, if we're being honest. Might be a little bit too high for my liking. But I think Breece Hall could eventually take over this backfield in a bigger way. And he could possibly be a league winner. He could possibly also be just a Jet, and his upside is capped. But I think Breece Hall is a decent buy low candidate right now. Going up against Pittsburgh, really you're starting any running back that you...
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where we are already, with a lot of running backs being hurt. But Breece Hall is a start against Pittsburgh this week.
Moving on to this week's sit-em running backs. My first sit-em running back this week is J.K. Dobbins going up against the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Chase Edmonds had 16 fantasy points last week, but they came off of 2 lucky rushing touchdowns. The Bills have been very good against running backs this week. They've shut down running backs this year, such as Derrick Henry. Just to throw it out there, they demolished Derrick Henry. So, I mean, J.K. Dobbins, it is only his second week back. He didn't do really anything against the Patriots. I think he had 20 rushing yards and 2 catches maybe. Put up a measly 6 fantasy points in his debut back. I think this has negative game script for the Ravens and especially J.K. Dobbins already, just because how good Buffalo's offense has been and is. Buffalo has the ability to put up a lot of points, and if this turns to a shootout, the Ravens aren't going to be running the ball or giving it to J.K. Dobbins all that much. They're going to be looking to throw the ball downfield to Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews, especially with how banged up the Buffalo Bills secondary is right now. I mean, they're playing without their star safety. Trey White's out. Teron Johnson's out. So, I mean, they have Kyer Elam starting this week as their CB1, which, I mean, last week the Dolphins kind of had a field day throwing the ball around the yard on the Bills. So, I mean, sit J.K. Dobbins this week. I doubt he comes out here and maybe he'll get a lucky touchdown like Chase Edmonds did last week. But, I mean, I'm not starting J.K. Dobbins this week. I'm trying to shop him around now just because I don't think that he has much upside for this year with the way the Ravens defense is playing in terms of passing the ball and Lamar doing his thing. So I'm sitting J.K. Dobbins this week against the Bills.
My set of running backs, I'm just going to group them together because they are the same game, and I'm not going to talk about the same game in 2 different scenarios. So it is Damian Harris and A.J. Dillon. Damian Harris is going up against the Packers. A.J. Dillon has gone up against the Patriots. These are 2 touchdown-dependent running backs, as what I've seen so far this season, especially with these 2 games. Ramondre Stevenson is getting better and better each week. It looks like he is doing more and more in this offense. Last week, he outproduced Damian Harris. Damian Harris seems to be touchdown dependent, and going up against a Packers defense that is pretty solid and being on the Patriots team that just lost their quarterback, I don't see him scoring a lot of touchdowns this week, so I am staying away from Damian Harris. And as far as A.J. Dillon's concerned, Aaron Jones is getting the more valuable touches, so A.J. Dillon is pretty much a touchdown dependent if you want a good day out of a running back. And going up against the Patriots defense, I don't really want to rock with that. I don't think a lot of touchdowns will be scored. Now, there is a world where the Packers blow them out and they feed A.J. Dillon the ball in the 4th quarter. So that isn't bad. But I just don't see high touchdown potential here from those 2 guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't personally blame you if you did start Damian Harris just because Green Bay's given up almost 110 yards a game to running backs this season so far through 3 weeks now. So, I mean, I can see why you would start him, but I can also see Ryan's point on why you wouldn't want to start him. And this one might be kind of out there for sit him this week, but I'm sitting Cam Akers going against the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers have been pretty solid against the run all year. They usually are. I mean, yeah, Javonte kind of did his thing, but I mean, that's really all that the Broncos could get going was running the ball with Javonte. And I know he did outtouch Darrell Henderson, 12 rushes versus 4. I mean, they didn't run the ball a whole lot last week. But, I mean, going up against this 49ers team that is good against the run, and Cam Akers did fumble last week. So, I mean, I just really can't see a world where Cam Akers gets going up against a 49ers defense that has a very solid front 7 behind a Rams offensive line that has not been very good at all this season. So, I mean, I don't have Cam Akers in any leagues because I didn't like him coming into this year. And if you did draft him, I'm sorry. You didn't listen to us. But now I'm sitting Cam Akers this week if I have him. And I'm advising you to sit Cam Akers this week as well if you have him.
Next guy I will be touching on, we're jumping to the wide receiver section. I'm starting DK Metcalf this week against the Detroit Lions. Now, this is kind of for the same reasons that I'm starting Geno Smith, Jamal Williams, Jared Goff. It's one of the highest over-unders of the week. I don't think that the Detroit Lions defense is looking so hot so far this season. I'm pretty sure the secondary is even banged up. DK had a pretty decent game last week. 64 yards, 5 receptions, and a touchdown. I think we can see kind of the similar production against the Lions. This isn't a high upside start by any means necessary because he is still a Seattle Seahawk. But if you're down bad at receiver, I think DK Metcalf is a fine option this week. Even in a daily fantasy, I'm not sure how much DK Metcalf is going for. But even if he's cheap, if he's in the wide receiver 30 range, I think there's pretty good value here because I could see him finishing, around the 20 range this week.
That's fair. No, I mean, I hate to rain on your parade, but I don't like that necessarily. I see what you're saying, but I mean, Jeff Okuda just locked down Justin Jefferson, and so did Amani Oruwariye.
I really don't care.
That's fair. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm just throwing my 2 cents in, even though you didn't ask. I just figured we are the greatest podcast on turf. So I mean,
the viewers can go with who they.
Yeah, it's fine, but I mean, I'm advising against starting DK Metcalf, but Ryan is kind of the more fantasy-oriented guy of the podcast. I mean,
because we can say the same. What happened week 1 against Washington?
With who?
Dotson 8, Terry McLaurin 8, and Curtis Samuel 8.
Yeah, but we're talking about Geno Smith here.
Oh, because Carson Wentz is.
He's probably better than Geno Smith.
Yeah. I'm sure.
It's not saying much, but he's probably a little bit better than Geno. But, I mean, I see what you're saying on that, though. My first start on my receiver of the week is Rashad Bateman. I'll keep this one short and sweet. It's simple, the fact that the Buffalo Bills secondary is banged up. I mean, yeah, Kyrie Elam was a top prospect coming out of college, but Rashad Bateman, he's eating in this offense. He has the 3rd highest yards ran per route. And, again, going up against a banged-up Buffalo Bills secondary that did not look good at all last week. So, I mean, I'm starting Rashad Bateman this week. I know it is the Buffalo Bills. They're notorious for their defense being always pretty good. But their whole secondary is banged up, and it showed last week against the Dolphins. So I'm starting Bateman this week.
Next wide receiver start this week, it is Chris Olave going up against the Vikings. Olave has seen more and more targets this year, or each week. I was pretty high on Olave. I drafted him in, I think, 2 or 3 of my leagues. Even named my team after him. Olave saw only 3 targets week 1, 13 targets week 2, 13 targets week 3. Jameis Winston and him are growing more and more fond of each other. He's going to be the deep threat here for the New Orleans Saints and going up against a Vikings defense that isn't that good, in my opinion. So I think Chris Olave can eat this week going up against the Vikings. And I think that with Michael Thomas having a bad toe, he might miss some practice reps. Jarvis Landry was even banged up at the game last week, and I'm not sure his status, but I know I saw him on the sideline a little bit. He's questionable. Injury's not believed to be serious, but if he misses a couple of days of practice and it's literally only Chris Olave out there with the receivers, yeah, it could be an extra little bump for him.
Yeah. Now, my second start on wide receiver this week is a guy who proved me wrong last week, a guy that I'm trying to sell high on personally in the league that I have him in, and that is Hollywood Brown, going up against the Carolina Panthers this week. It's simple as this. Hollywood Brown, he has 28 targets over the past 2 games. Last week he had 17 alone for 140 yards. Going up against the Panthers defense that has allowed the 8th most receiving yards in the NFL this year through 3 weeks. So they've gave up Jesus, I can't talk. They've given up the 8th most yards to receivers this year in the NFL so far. Hollywood Brown's literally there. I am trying to sell high on him just because D-Hop's coming back soon, and he's probably not going to see 10 to 20 targets a game with DeAndre Hopkins there. But, I mean, you got to start Hollywood this week coming off a 17-target game up against a Panthers secondary that has not been very good this year in a game where Kyler's going to be able to throw the ball around the yard against his defense. So, I mean, I'm starting Hollywood Brown this week. He hasn't really been... He's had 3 pretty good weeks, 14, 16, and 28 fantasy points this year. I'll take that every week for my receiver, too, in Hollywood. So start Hollywood Brown this week and try and sell high on him if you can.
Jumping to the wide receiver sit-ems. First one is Garrett Wilson going up against the Steelers. I like Garrett Wilson, but Zach Wilson's going to be back this week, so I'm really not sure what to expect.
Is Zach Wilson playing this week?
He's questionable, and I expect him to play.
Huh.
So if Joe Flacco's in, you can kind of take this out of the equation. But if it is Zach Wilson, I'm kind of sitting all Jets besides Breece Hall just to see the situation. Yeah. Even Breece Hall might be a little bit of a risk because I don't know how much Zach Wilson passed to the running backs. Michael Carter had success with him, so I think it might be the same situation. But I'm not sure how Garrett Wilson fares with Zach Wilson. So until I see that, I am sitting him if I can.
Yeah, I had 2... I had a starter. I had a sit-em receiver and a sit-em tight end this week. My first sit-em wide receiver was Christian Kirk of the Jags. Now, I know he's been having a crazy year so far, and he's been doing his thing. But, I mean, we've seen the Eagles' secondary look like best in the league. James Bradbury looks good. Darius Slay's looked good whenever he's had the top receiver on him. So, I mean, this is kind of a risky play. The Eagles' defense has been very good. This is a big test for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags this week. Doug Peterson's return to Philly. I don't have Christian Kirk in any leagues, but I am sitting him this week if I do have him.
And finally, my last wide receiver sit on this week, it is Juju going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Juju had a pretty decent game last week, but Tampa Bay's defense is solid nonetheless. And I think that the Chiefs are going to feed the ball to Travis Kelce. And I don't think you're going to be starting Juju any week. I would try to trade him if you know somebody in your league likes Juju because he had a decent game last week, but I don't trust him.
No. And my sit-em tight end of the week is Zach Ertz. I know I just said start Hollywood, but the Panthers have been good against tight ends this year. They have been giving up 26 yards a game to tight ends this year, which is bottom 10 in the league against tight ends. Last week he was terrible. He had 10 targets. He only hauled in 6 receptions, dropped a touchdown, had a couple bad drops. So, I mean, and again, the Panthers have their bright spot on defense has kind of been against the run and against tight ends, as it shows. They're only giving up 26 yards a game to tight ends. So, sit Zach Ertz this week. I mean, Kyler, he's been targeting him, but Hollywood has been doing his thing. What's the guy's name? Greg Dortch has been doing his thing, and Zach Ertz had a couple bad drops last week. So, I'm not sure how much Kyler's going to be looking for him this week against some solid tight end coverage players in Shaq Thompson and Jeremy Chin. And, yeah, sit Zach Ertz this week.
And that's going to wrap up our Stardom Sit-ems.
Yeah, go ahead and set your fantasy lineups and be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Show us some love. Be on the lookout for the rest of the week. We have some more uploads coming tomorrow and Friday. Good luck this week, everybody. I hope we're right. I hope you guys win some money from our best bets that are dropping tomorrow, and I hope you guys win your fantasy week by listening to us.
Yeah. See you.
Peace.